The independent autopsy the Wells family paid for is back, and it cannot rule out foul play. That's the first of 2 documents that landed in this case within 24 hours of each other this week, and the second one we're not allowed to see at all. Here's where things stand tonight. 1. Pathologist Dr. Roger Mitchell has released the preliminary results of the family-commissioned autopsy, and his conclusion on both the cause of Nolan's death and the manner of it is a single word: undetermined. 2. That same report describes something on the back of Nolan's head that this family says demands an explanation. 3. For the first time since this investigation began, the Jackson County District Attorney has spoken publicly, and her message was not about what the state's autopsy found. It was about why nobody outside a grand jury room is going to see it. Tonight we're going through both documents, the one that was released and the one that was sealed, carefully, and as always, separating what's officially confirmed from what's still just being repeated online. Let's start with what actually happened this week, because the words matter here more than in almost any update we've done on this case. On July 22nd, the legal team representing Nolan's family released the preliminary findings of the independent autopsy they commissioned.
He's saying based on the examination of the body, he cannot rule out foul play. That is significant.
This was the second autopsy performed on Nolan, separate from, and in addition to, the official examination conducted by the Mississippi State Medical Examiner's Office on July 7th, the day after his body was recovered. The independent examination was performed by Dr. Roger Mitchell. The headline finding, confirmed by NBC News, CNN, and PBS, cause of death, undetermined. Manner of death, undetermined. Pending investigation. Now, before anyone treats that as an ending, we need to be precise about what undetermined means in a forensic report, because this single word is already being read 2 completely opposite ways online. An autopsy answers 2 separate questions. Cause of death is the medical mechanism: drowning, blunt force trauma, cardiac event. Manner of death is the classification: natural, accident, suicide, homicide, or undetermined. When a pathologist marks both as undetermined pending investigation, he is not saying, "We'll never know." He is saying, the physical findings alone, without toxicology and without the investigative file, do not allow me to responsibly pick one. It is a refusal to guess. And in a case this saturated with speculation, a refusal to guess is itself information. Here's the second confirmed finding, and it's the one carrying most of the weight this week. Dr. Mitchell noted red discoloration on the back of Nolan's head. That detail is in the report. NBC News and local outlet WXXV both confirm it. What is not confirmed is what that discoloration means. And I want to hold that line clearly, because versions of this detail are circulating online with measurements, with causes, with conclusions attached, none of which appear in the confirmed reporting. A red discoloration on the back of the head is a finding, not a verdict. It could matter enormously. It could have an innocent explanation. The pathologist himself did not assign it one, and if the man who physically examined Nolan won't, neither will we. What Dr. Mitchell did say, and this is confirmed by NBC News, The Griot, and by attorney Ben Crump's public remarks, is that based on his examination, he could not rule out foul play. Listen to the construction of that sentence, because it's doing careful work. Cannot rule out foul play is not found evidence of foul play. It means the door investigators would need open is still open. For a family that has spent 3 weeks being told, in effect, "There's nothing to see here" by parts of the internet, that sentence is the entire reason they paid for this examination. Here's a genuine question, and I want you to actually sit with it before you decide where you land. Is "cannot rule out foul play" a meaningful finding, or is it the kind of cautious phrase any pathologist would use to avoid liability, regardless of what the body actually showed? Both readings are defensible. I'm not going to tell you which one is right. I'm curious which one you believe, and why. Put it in the comments. I read them. It's worth understanding what a second autopsy actually is, because there's a version of this circulating online where the family's examination is treated as a do-over that should have settled everything. And that's not how forensic pathology works. A second autopsy is performed on a body that has already been examined once. The first examination leaves its own marks. Organs have been removed and examined. Tissue has been sampled. Incisions have been made. If any time has passed, decomposition and preparation for burial change what the tissue can show. A second pathologist is reading a page that has already been written on. That's precisely why families in high-profile cases commission them anyway. Not because the second examination sees more, but because it's the only way to get an opinion that doesn't run through the same official channels the family may have questions about. It's an independent check, not a superior one. So when Dr. Mitchell, who has handled exactly these kinds of independent examinations in nationally watched cases, comes back with undetermined, the responsible reading is not the autopsy failed. It's that the physical evidence, examined twice now by 2 separate pathologists working for 2 different parties, does not tell a simple story. If Nolan's body carried an obvious, unambiguous answer, one of those 2 examinations would have found it. Neither has said so. That is itself a finding, and it narrows the space this case now has to be resolved in. Not on the autopsy table, but in the toxicology lab, in the digital evidence, and in front of a grand jury. One more confirmed gap. This preliminary report does not include toxicology. That's pending in both autopsies. Toxicology takes weeks even in routine cases. The samples go to specialized labs, and rushing them is how results get challenged later. But it means the single most basic set of questions about Nolan's final hours. What was or wasn't in his system, and in what amounts, remains unanswered in every document that currently exists, released or sealed. Until those results land, every confident claim you've seen online about that night is running ahead of the evidence. Which brings us to the second document, the one you can't read, and to a voice this case had never heard before this week. On July 23rd, one day after the independent results dropped, Jackson County District Attorney Angel Myers McElrath released a video address on social media, her first public comments since Nolan Wells died. Confirmed by Locks, NOLA.com, and Good Morning America's reporting. And her message, stripped to its core, was this: the state autopsy, the official one, the one with the full evidentiary weight of the Mississippi State Medical Examiner behind it, will not be released, not now, not in response to the independent findings, not until a Jackson County grand jury has reviewed all of the evidence in this case. And not just the autopsy, other evidence collected in the investigation stays sealed on the same schedule. Her stated reasoning, and I'm summarizing her own framing as reported by Locks, this restraint is not an effort to keep the truth from the public. It is an effort to protect the integrity of the investigation and the grand jury proceeding, because as a prosecutor, she has an ethical obligation to avoid public statements that could influence witnesses, prejudice a proceeding, or compromise the fairness of the process. Let's sit with the timing for a second, because it's the part nobody has to speculate about. For 3 weeks, this DA said nothing publicly. The day after the family's independent autopsy made national news with "cannot rule out foul play," she spoke. Prosecutors choose their moments. Whatever else that timing means, it tells you her office understood that the independent report had changed the public conversation, and that silence was no longer neutral. Now, what does a grand jury review actually mean here? Plain language version, because this process is about to become the center of this case, and most coverage is skipping past how it works. A grand jury is a panel of ordinary citizens from Jackson County. It does not decide guilt or innocence. That's a trial jury's job, if there ever is a trial. A grand jury answers one narrower question. Has the prosecutor shown enough evidence that criminal charges are justified? The threshold is probable cause, far lower than beyond a reasonable doubt. The proceeding happens in secret, and the secrecy is not a cover-up. It's the design, and it's centuries old. It exists so witnesses can testify without public pressure, so people who are investigated but never charged aren't publicly branded by evidence that didn't hold up. And so the case a prosecutor may eventually bring isn't argued on social media before it's argued in court. There's no judge presiding over the evidence, no defense attorney cross-examining. The prosecutor presents, the panel decides. Which is why what D.A. McElrath does with this presentation matters so much, and why her office sealing everything until then is coherent. Whatever else you make of it, every document released early is a document witnesses can read before they testify. But standard practice cuts both ways, and we should be honest about that. Sealing evidence pending a grand jury is routine in Mississippi for deaths considered unnatural or suspicious. We covered that when the referral was first confirmed, and attorney Tyler Bailey made exactly that point publicly. So the seal itself is not proof that prosecutors are sitting on something explosive, and the absence of released evidence is not proof that they aren't. Both camps online are reading the same sealed file as confirmation of their opposite theories. It confirms neither. What it does confirm is a direction. This case is being handled as one where a grand jury's answer is required, which is not how accidental deaths with clean evidence typically resolve. I'll be honest about where I land, and you can tell me if you think I'm wrong. Given how badly this case has been handled by public speculation on both sides for 3 weeks, I think the DA sealing everything until the grand jury is the more responsible call, even though it's frustrating to watch. But I understand completely why a family that's already waited 3 weeks would read that same silence as one more delay they didn't ask for. If you were Nolan's parent, would 3 more weeks of silence feel like protection, or like being shut out of your own son's case? Tell me honestly. What we can say confirmed. The family met with the DA earlier this month, a meeting both sides described as respectful, per ABC News. The case is headed to a grand jury. The FBI remains involved in a supporting role, including, per its own field office statement last week, on interstate threats made against people connected to this case. Those threads haven't gone away, they've gone quiet, which is a different thing. While this week belonged to the 2 autopsy documents, 3 other confirmed threads in this investigation kept moving in the background, and any one of them could produce the next headline. First, the phone. Nolan's phone is undergoing a coordinated review, the family's independent investigators examining it alongside law enforcement's own examination. That arrangement, confirmed through Ben Crump, is unusual and worth appreciating. In most investigations, a victim's family waits on the other side of a wall while digital forensics happen. Here, both sides look at the same device. Whatever that phone holds, messages, locations, the last timestamps of activity, it will be one of the few pieces of evidence in this case that two independent teams can vouch for. If their conclusions match, those findings will be close to unchallengeable. If they don't match, we'll learn that too. Second, the federal thread. The FBI's Jackson Field Office confirmed in its public statement last week that federal resources are assisting this case, with Jackson County firmly in the lead, and that federal involvement specifically includes interstate threats made against people connected to this matter. We keep restating that carefully, because it remains one of the most misread facts in this case. The FBI's confirmed role is not evidence that Nolan's death has been federally reclassified. It's confirmation that somebody, somewhere, has been threatening people connected to this story seriously enough to cross state lines and become a federal crime in its own right. The Bureau has not said what the threats contained or who received them, and the reporting that claims to know remains unverified. Whoever is sending them isn't helping Nolan. They're committing crimes against people connected to his case and chilling the very witnesses this investigation needs. And third, the state's own file keeps growing. The sheriff's investigation has continued through all of this, through the funeral, through the independent autopsy, through the DA's statement. Every interview, every piece of physical evidence, every camera and GPS record from that stretch of water is accumulating toward the same destination. The presentation McElrath's office will eventually make behind the grand jury's closed doors. The quiet is not the case going cold. The quiet is the case going somewhere specific. Two claims are still doing heavy rotation online, and both have been publicly answered. First, the pool party photo. A photo of Nolan smiling at a party keeps circulating as supposed proof he was alive after July 4th. Reporting attributed to Rolling Stone traced the image's metadata. It was taken June 27th, a full week before Horn Island. The photo is real. The claim attached to it is false. Second, the viral argument video. A recording alleged to capture Nolan in a confrontation before his death keeps resurfacing. The friend who posted it has said publicly and repeatedly that the voice on that recording is his own, not Nolan's. Notice the pattern in both. A real artifact, a false caption. That's how misinformation works in this case. Nobody's inventing photos, they're inventing context. Which is exactly why this channel keeps doing the slower thing. Source first, conclusion second. And when the source doesn't support a conclusion, we say so, even when it's unsatisfying. If you've seen another claim about this case circulating that you're not sure is real, drop it in the comments, with a link if you have one. I'll check the ones that keep coming up and cover what I find in the next update. Let's put the confirmed record in one place. Start to this week. July 4th, afternoon. Nolan Wells, 18 years old, is last seen during crowded 4th of July celebrations on Horn Island, off the Mississippi coast, after traveling there by boat with friends. July 6th. A U.S. park ranger finds his body in the water. July 7th. The Mississippi State Medical Examiner's Office performs the official autopsy. Results sealed to this day, mid-July. Nolan's family meets with District Attorney McElrath. Ben Crump confirms the case will go to a grand jury once the investigation concludes. A coordinated review of Nolan's phone is arranged. The family's independent investigators alongside law enforcement. July 18 to 19. The FBI's Jackson Field Office releases its first full public statement. Jackson County leads. Federal resources assist, including on interstate threats against people connected to the case. July 20. Nolan is laid to rest in Ocean Springs. July 22, the independent autopsy's preliminary results are released. Cause and manner undetermined, red discoloration on the back of the head, foul play cannot be ruled out, toxicology pending. July 23. The DA breaks her silence. Everything material stays sealed until the grand jury sees it. That's the record. Everything else you've read is commentary. It's worth pausing on what this week actually was for the people at the center of it. Nolan's parents buried their son on Monday. On Tuesday, the examination they had to commission themselves, because the official one is sealed, came back with the one answer no family wants: undetermined. On Wednesday, the prosecutor told the public that the fuller answer exists, but that they, like everyone else, will wait for a grand jury to see it first. Nolan Wells was 18, a student athlete, a kid who went to an island on the 4th of July and didn't come home. 3 weeks later, no document on the public record says how he died. His family's entire ask, from day one, has been the same sentence: a thorough and factual accounting of their son's final hours. This week moved that ask forward, not to an answer, but visibly forward. That distinction is thin comfort for a grieving family. It's also, right now, the only honest description of where this stands. Pulling this update together, the independent autopsy is out. Undetermined on cause, undetermined on manner, a documented red discoloration on the back of the head, and a pathologist who will not rule out foul play, with toxicology still to come. The state's autopsy stays sealed, along with the rest of the evidence, until a Jackson County grand jury reviews it, and for the first time, the DA herself has said so publicly, on the record, in her own words. What's still open? Both toxicology reports, the grand jury's timeline, the phone review, the threat investigation, and the question underneath all of it: what happened on Horn Island after that afternoon? Before you go, one question I actually want an answer to. 2 pathologists, 2 separate examinations, and both come back undetermined. Does that tell you this case is more complicated than either side is admitting, or does it tell you the answer exists and someone's choosing not to release it yet? I've got my own read, but I'm more interested in yours. Say it in the comments, and I'll pin the take I think makes the best case, whichever direction it goes. We'll cover the toxicology results and the grand jury developments the moment they're confirmed. Subscribe so you don't miss the next update on this case. Take care of each other. I'll talk to you soon.